add to the rundown for the show. You're very interested in talking about Meta's addition of legs to their Metaverse console. Is that? Do you have like a lot of insight into how legs? Like, what's the angle? What kind of commentary can we provide on the legs of the
I'm just saying,
Metaverse provided by
as
Meta?
you take in this streaming experience, you must think to yourself, I wish I could see Brandon's legs.
I still don't. You're
not buying what they're selling?
I don't buy it. I just like, I don't know. I heard the Ben Thompson universe has a new podcast, the Sharp Tech.
Yeah, I put it in the show notes. There's a link.
Yeah,
I'll listen to it. That's a good like pre-show recommendation just around.
That's fun.
Like if you want someone, like we'll kind of do a little bit of this show for Google, maybe in Microsoft Ignite, but if you don't really want to watch the keynote, I haven't watched the Meta, what do they call their thing? Like Connect, Facebook, Meta Connect. Like it was interesting, like because they kind of do all the work for you. They kind of tell you kind of the cliff notes, like here's what you should know. So I mean, I think that part was good. So interesting.
Yeah, so they were talking extensively about virtualization, metaverse stuff, and I don't know, man.
Virtualization, metaverse stuff.
Sorry, VR.
VMs. Now we're getting into our domain. If you
that would be good.
Metaverse. Oh, back off, baby.
I need some more cool, refreshing water.
Did you listen to the episode?
Yeah, I listened to it, and like I don't know. It's just like it doesn't seem necessary. I guess there's that. Someone's got to get that old Jurassic Park thing. No one asked if it was needed or whatever. However that quote goes, right? So busy figuring out if they could get VR going, no one asked if they should. And
yeah. Meanwhile, over in Decentraland.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. It's
oh man.
I thought that had a good, interesting point about it, though. I think he said something like something to the effect of like, hey, Meta or Facebook may do all this work, but ultimately, maybe they may kind of seed the market, but then their prediction was Microsoft would come in and sort of like ultimately own it. And I was like, yeah, that's sort of that does play out over and over. Someone kind of does all the heavy lifting for something, and it's the wrong time. So I don't know. I mean, I'm always like, I don't ever want to write things off completely, but it's like I guess I always come back to, it's like I just don't have any interest in it. That's maybe what I ultimately come back to. It's like I don't know, like I don't have any interest in it. I don't find myself, like, my son's got Oculus. I've used it like one time. It was novel, it's interesting, but like I don't know. I just don't care. But maybe I'm missing out. Maybe that's like the age.
I think the safe technique. I mean, obviously we're in tech, so writing things off is always dangerous. Although we might find that in
wait. We've got a good track record when it comes to Google.
Like Google, baby.
Yeah. But it seems like what you have to do is, I don't know the fancy term for it, but you just have to lessen the expectations. Like, sure, there'll probably be some sort of VR whatever thing, but like, to your point, like it won't really be that cool. Like it won't be like fantastic. It'll just be like it. I wonder if this is true. If we were to go back and look at all of the sort of like stuff IBM like talks about and says they would do.
Hold on, Kathy, let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you, because I'm sort of like, hey, because I think we're ready to go, and I don't have I don't have a good edit point, and then Matt's like, hey, this is good content. So are we good? I don't know. The stuff I put in here in platform engineering, and then
no, that's all good.
You guys, whatever you guys want to do.
I want to talk about legs.
All right. Okay. Well, there you go. I think
so. What do you want to pick up on here?
I guess we should start on legs. I mean, that's what.
Oh man, Copilot.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. We can do like the first segment. You want to do the first segment on the Meta stuff? We can do that, or Ben Thompson, or just repeat some of what we just talked about, or do something totally different. I don't
care. Yes.
Okay. Well, whatever you listen, I'm ready. Sorry. Wherever you take us is fine. I just need a starting point. I should have said that at the beginning. So.
My camera looks too bright. What is going on here? I mean, obviously it's too bright now because that's my wall. Yeah, whatever. Let me see. Where is that? Let me turn this down a little bit. I don't know what's happening. If I turn that up, whatever. Okay.
All right,
I'll have a
whenever
pause
you're
and then start. Yeah.
ready.
Well, I don't really have anything too zany, except Matt Ray, you were telling me that in the metaverse you can have legs now, right? Is that the case?
It's the greatest news ever.
Yeah. So we'll be able to people will be able to move instead of float around. That's great. I mean, legs probably.
Yeah, what is the official news, Matt,
fill it
for
out.
those maybe that didn't see it?
I like the rest of the internet, I get my news from Twitter, and I saw that Meta was announcing that we now have legs, and so I think the 53 users who are on there will probably enjoy being able to walk around. Maybe they can go off and start a new community somewhere else, but I think this is a big breakthrough.
Well, we were talking a little bit before we recorded here about VR and I think virtualization in the metaverse, as I incorrectly brought up, but just VR stuff. And like I think it is kind of like another topic maybe we'll get to here, platform engineering. Like we're in the tech world. You never want to just like write something off completely as just like whatever. But like I think maybe that the habit that I try to learn, one, is just to be curious and interested in things rather than just shitting on them right from the get-go. Because then you just you make a mess. Yeah, especially if you don't have legs.
Legs are going to come back strong, and I'm going to look silly, being like, how come they had to announce that the metaverse has legs?
Exactly, and it seems like the other downshifting to that, right? Like it's always nice. I wrote myself a note this once that like, in fact, I think I have this in my daily thing to look at of things to remind myself, which clearly I don't look at every day. But like, instead of being negative or arguing, just ask people, why and how. Ask people to explain themselves. I think I've gone over this before. That if I'm kind of like don't know what to talk about with some stranger that I have to talk with, I try to just interview them and ask them a bunch of questions. That's why I'm always like, "How's that? Is that fun?" What do you do? Like, and people love talking about that. And then next thing you know, you can go get some more like, king crab claws that are pre-cracked for you or whatever.
Kote's guide to small talk. Get them to talk about themselves and slip off for the crab.
Get onto the crabs like it.
Anyways, it seems like what you want to do. Well, one, I mean, I just think all the metaverse VR stuff is total bullshit. However,
hey.
like probably the right prediction is to have or like pull down to a third whatever the razzle dazzle is, and that's where things will pan out, right? So it's like and that got me to thinking like I don't mean this to sound the way it does if you were listening to what I was just saying, but like over the last 20 years, IBM always has this like vision of like, computing of the future, right? And, I used to go to the labs that they had in Austin and you would see things and it would be like technologically sophisticated and business important stuff, but like not interesting from like a consumer standpoint. Like one of the things they had that I vaguely remember is it was just like the hospital room of the future. And it was just, and like, I'm sure many of us have been in a hospital room, either visiting someone or ourselves. And yeah, you do go into a hospital room and you're like, what century am I in? Right? Like, what is going on here with all this stuff? And it's crazy. And like, and then the way things run, obviously, it needs more computer is what's going to solve that situation. But, and then on and on and on, right? Like however many years ago when they were going to use the blockchain to ensure a secure fruit delivery chain, supply chain in all these areas and all this kind of stuff. It's sort of like, oh yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense that you're just going to like incrementally improve the way business is done so that it frees up resources or just get you straight up profit and you're done, right? Never mind. Or so that you can maybe like come up with new stuff and be competitive and blah, blah. So, it makes me think like, what are the industrial applications of VR that IBM and other people have talked about? And it's all stuff like architects and like surgeons,
plumbers,
mechanics.
Yeah.
All right.
Just, I mean, I guess now that I think of it, basically to like see through walls, and flesh, like see-through walls of flesh and actual walls, and then also maybe like the thing you can do with IKEA where you're sort of like arranging furniture and things like that, and that would be nice to be, or if you were like, we're renting our house in Austin. If anyone wants to rent a lovely house, it's available. You should go check it out.
Mine too, real soon.
I should put a link in the show notes there. It's got great pictures. But
I'll
anyways,
my pick, and you can make mine your pick.
I could see that if you were one of these Californians that wants to rent a house in Austin or buy a house, you could like put on your goggles and like go walk around the house, right? And
little virtual tour, yeah.
And it would almost be hilarious to see how they made that make the rooms look bigger than they actually are. like how would of course you have whatever. But so like I could buy that, like, sure, so you're gonna do that kind of stuff, but like I don't know, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Like more of it is just sort of like, yeah, when's the hardware gonna get cheap enough and like fast enough, and then your network connection be reliable enough so that you could do like you could walk or you could do a home tour. Maybe that's the use case that we need. Once you can do a home tour, then we're basically there.
But I think, Coach, you're hitting on a couple like really interesting, I think, good points in the whole thing around kind of like the meta. We'll have the meta conversation about the metaverse. It's sort of like, hey, when we evaluate all these new ideas that we see, I think the first question is like, who's pushing it? Where is it coming from? Because I think we all have experience around, you kind of see things happen kind of like, if you will, from the ground up, right? People are like, oh, people are starting to do this container thing. They're using this free tool Docker, and you start to see it kind of percolate, and you're like, that's always kind of the grassroots is always the most interesting, right? It's like, wow, people know they have this problem and they're finding their own tools to do it. And you're like, so I think anytime you see something like that, or like a new site gets out there that you don't really know much about, but then suddenly lots of people are using it and they're telling you about it, it's like, okay, then that's always a good sign of like real need, potential opportunity. And then what you're talking about with IBM, we'll call it the Watson approach. Like IBM sort of brands something Watson. In this case, Facebook rebrands itself Meta and Metaverse and Oculus. And it's like, well, those are clearly companies trying to push something down, right? They have a need for like what they think would be a gigantic market. And then all of the things you just mentioned, along with that initiative, is a whole slew of aspirational use cases that are easy to conceptualize, but they're also not things you actually see. Like when you go to the real hospital, you don't see any of that stuff. Like when you have a meeting, you do it on Zoom, you don't do it in a metaverse, right? So that's, I think there's more reason to be skeptical of those than I think others, right? Because those, I think we all have experience of like the people pushing it, have an inherent agenda, but like they can't just will the need into it. Now, sometimes it works out. Sometimes they'll flip it around. Sometimes it's like something does get pushed down, but it's much harder. It's much harder to do it that way than to see.
I feel like maybe you're putting a word around something I've been feeling for a few years now, which is like I think I'm suffering from like aspiration fatigue, like just like I don't know, like exactly to your point of like I don't really like care. I'll put it in caring words like. I'm not really interested in spending a lot of time on like VR metaverse stuff, but it sure would be nice to see what interesting little innovations they have in Zoom to make things better, right? Like I remember, like as an example, at some point, I think most of the calendaring systems and software made it so that if you had a Zoom link in there, you could just like click join, like not just a URL, but it was aware that it was in there. And it was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That seemed to have showed up in Mac Calendar recently. Now there's a join button, and like I don't know when that happened, but that's the kind of like, and I think Apple has kind of the best approach to this. They definitely have their moonshots, but the problem with moonshots is they're really expensive. And I think recently we heard Tim Cook they don't use the word metaverse. Like people don't know what that is. They can't go there. They can't do anything with that. But what they'll do is they'll point the ship to like tack that way. We're like, well, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll make some motion towards that. We'll add support for that hardware, even though nobody's using it. We're not gonna like bet the company on that though. And so when somebody, IBM, Facebook, Theranos has blown a ton of money in some sector of the market and have nothing to show for it, you're like, maybe that wasn't a good idea. Or maybe they're like, they pointed out the places we can take advantage of. I mean, I mentioned Theranos because I'm watching that dropout thing, and we all know how it ends, but I keep thinking, it's like, please tell me there was something useful that came out of this.
Yeah. And like, maybe, okay, so maybe another use case that would be good is like, if VR stuff is going to make it so we can finally hang pictures on the wall and like know how to line them up and where to put them and all. So the challenge is hang up a picture that requires 2 hooks, right? Like, and if you can do that successfully, then the next stage, that's like level 1 of the maturity cycle. The next stage is now I'm going to give you 3 pictures, and you need to be able to do some VR thing where basically like you look at the pictures, you look at the wall, and then you do kind of like, in PowerPoint, you can do like distribute horizontally or distribute vertically. And you basically like distribute like horizontally or vertically. And then in your goggles or whatever, it basically figures out where to put the pictures and where to put and you have dual screws on both of them. And so basically you're moving around, you're wearing the goggles, and like a laser sight for like a guided missile, like it goes in and it's like, put the holes here, right? And like, if that works, let's say 99% of the time, then boom, we've got it, right? Like and humanity will have evolved.
Yeah, and you can buy it at Home Depot and it's less than $20.
Or even better, they just come with a pack of nails. Like the Googles just come with nails.
Oculus, now with the nails.
All right, good. That was an excellent end, Matt. Always count on you to bring it home.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good. Yeah, man. People have stuff to say on legs. I didn't think that would go that far. Good. I like it. Oculus.
We got to hang some pictures around here.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's why I don't have any like HomeKit automation stuff, because it's like, look, I'm not spending $1,000, so you don't have to switch a light switch.
Yeah, I think I probably over the years I've bought like 5 apps that like help you hang pictures, and the best one is still this one that's like 5 years old that hasn't been updated in forever, because it actually just gives you give it the measurements, like all the measurements, and it's just like, yeah, put the holes here.
All right, here, I'll give you the tip. That, of course, I did a lot of research by watching TikTok. Here's what I found. I saw one. Okay, take a piece of blue tape, painter's tape, and just on the back of your thing, whatever, like it's your picture, right? Like if it has like 2 holes, just like put the piece of tape on it, and then, if you will, like just punch a hole right where each thing goes, and then put that on the wall, and then level it, and then boom, you're done.
Man,
it's a very simple way. And another one I saw, if you're doing, I guess I don't know if it has like a wire on it. You know how sometimes like it's hard to get
that's why I need 2.
Then you put like what someone showed is like you actually take a fork, right, and put a fork on the I guess the hanger that's sitting there, and you use the fork. Basically, you put it on, you slide it on the fork, and it slides right in, and then you just reach over and you take the fork out, and then it's boom, it's all done.
Wow.
Like, I don't know. I thought these tips were incredible. I was like, I have destroyed walls, and like
I'd like to invest.
Picture hanging. I was like, you don't need a nap at all. You need some tape and a fork. I was like,
I think maybe that. I mean, this is where we're gonna get the next step in human evolution. Is just like our fellow humans are gonna master the form of short video, like tip giving, and not like those fake tips like how to bake how to bake like a cupcake in like a Tide box or something like that. Just like a bunch of made up bullshit. But like actual, just like, here's just something to make your everyday life better. I think is what
I will say that TikTok, I mean, there's a lot of wasted time in there, but like the whole TikTok taught me, I don't know, just like a 30-second tip of like life. I don't know, whatever, how to fold a towel, how to do that. Yeah. It's just like, I can't get enough of that. I'm just like,
I want to do some of those.
Just bring it on, bring on the household tips. Yeah, I was like, maybe I could do. There must be. Well, just real quick before we get back to the show,
talk.
Just let everybody. Hey, if you want a quick tip on how to secure your environment, go see our friends at Teleport. I put the link in the chat. They'll hook you up. They'll help you secure everything. It'll be great. Check out Teleport.
I think also
tell them Software Defined Talk sent you. Go ahead.
Also, I think blue painter tape is the MacGyver's duct tape of the 21st century. I think that's what
definitely
we all
is
need.
For around the house to like measure stuff, like put stuff on. It's definitely because it's better than a notepad or what is it?
Or masking
Post-it
tape.
note. Just like throw some painter's tape on that.
Yeah, can I just say fuck masking tape? Masking tape is fucking bullshit. Like there's no reason for it to exist.
You say that now.
Well, if you have blue painter tape, you don't need masking tape. I think is
Yeah.
the thing.
I would
I
agree
was
with
gonna
that. I think
say
you're
when you
right.
need
I
to
think-
close up a box, but you know what? Wrapping tape's better.
I mean,
No, use the
Well, what
the
is masking
packing
tape
tape
for
for
these
that. The
days?
shipping, you
What?
don't. I think masking tape.
I know.
I agree with you. I think that is completely. It's either blue tape or the clear. You don't need masking. Masking tape.
Every time I use masking tape, I'm like fucked again. Masking tape has fucked me again.
Is blue painter's tape really? Is it just masking tape that's blue? I
No,
wonder what the
it's
actual.
less sticky.
Is it what it is? Okay, I
Masking
wonder if
tape
it's
will,
just
rip
like
things off.
masking tape with less glue or something.
And I think
don't know.
Oh,
I think
sure,
blue
yeah.
painter's tape is like more sturdy, right? Masking tape is like really thin.
I don't know. They're probably about the same. But the point is, you can get blue painter's tape in different colors.
Whoa.
Oh, that's true. That's true. All right,
Wow.
Matt,
Going deep on tape.
You can get it in off-white, so it looks like masking.
telling you, man, people that aren't watching the streaming, this is some good content. I don't know. They've missed out on probably the best part of the show this time. So, I'm gonna put that in. This is why you should watch the stream. All right, Cote, whenever you're ready.
Legs.
Yep. All right. What were we talking about? Okay. Well, speaking of aspiration fatigue, I've been spending the past week or so trying to catch up on the whole storm of platform engineering stuff. And I think what happened here is over sometime in the past month or so, there was is it Humanitech? They put on this platform con, and there's a lot of great talks there. I need to go watch. I've only watched the one by well, that's not true. I genuinely watched the one by my old friend Paula Kennedy, who used to work here. She taught me everything I know about, as we called it back then, platform as a product and everything. And she had a great, she's got a great update to her whole, like, what is this platform business stuff, which is really nice. She's always well organized and educative. Is that the right word? Anyhow, there are many other sessions to go over. I'm eager to watch the one from Walmart, but I think it's also driven a lot of discussion of what is this thing? How is it different than whatever we have now? I mean, ultimately the question is, how is it different than DevOps? And in fact, I think someone had the in Paula's talk there in the QA period. I should go back and listen to it because they had the old. They didn't even say this is more of a statement than a question, but it was basically a statement with a question mark at the end. And I think, I mean, we can get into the details, but, I just like to pile on a bunch of random stuff. But they had a good positioning of platform engineering, I think, in this question, which I'm messing it up, but it was basically like DevOps is about like culture and operation and like how you work. And then SRE is basically about like keeping your stuff up and running, which is phrased better, but it's the actual like doing the insight, incident management and scalability, like the actual things like that. And then platform engineering was like, I've kind of forgot how they defined that, but it was basically like the actual tools and developer-centered stuff. I've totally ruined their summary of it, but that's the whole deal. It's like I think now a lot of us need to take another a couple of weeks and just go figure out what's going on with this platform engineering business, with the notion of seeing, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but seeing if we now have a label for kind of like an amorphous thing that was running around out there. And I think the one conclusion, the one sort of thing I've come to that I think is pragmatic and helpful, aside from all the obvious stuff, right? The obvious stuff being that what we're talking about here is you have your developers who are writing software for your organization, and you want to have people building the runtime stack and the way all their stuff is packaged up and all the release and configuration management. But then also you want to add in self-service stuff for them getting, for developers getting the resources and deploying stuff and all the work that they do. And in addition to that, you also, I don't think anyone says middleware, but I think the platform engineer is in charge of providing the middleware and getting that up and running. So you have all of that, but then I think the major, it's almost like I love to think in cycles, and I think originally DevOps was all about tools and technologies like Puppet and Chef and the other ones, and then perfectly finally so it went all culture, and then you had phrases like technology is easy, people are hard, it's not about the tools, and then I think I've already launched into my history of things here. I've forgotten the points I was going to make a couple stacks above here. But then I think what happened is we were all cool in the PaaS era, but then people didn't want to buy into that. And then Kubernetes came around. And as I think I've covered here and there, like at that DevOps Days Dallas talk. So we basically just entered this recurrence of reinventing the platform. And now Kubernetes is like low enough down. And I think everyone agrees that you've got to build a stack on top of it, a platform to make it usable by developers. And so therefore, the technology is driving like a reevaluation of the practices. And in the same way that DevOps is kind of born of like, we need better automation than like Blade Logic and Opsware and whatever else. Like now it's sort of like, yeah, we actually need some tools and technologies and ways of using them that like make Kubernetes usable by developers. And then there you go. You're sort of like, and here we are again. And then in 3 years, we're going to like all be about culture and not and kind of de-emphasize the tools and the technology.
So do you think that platform engineering is kind of like, everyone got aspirational fatigue from DevOps and they're like, you know what, that all that stuff sounds great and really hard, but you know what, why don't and then SRE came along and they're like, oh, so we can just grab the techniques without grabbing or we can grab the organizational structure without grabbing the inherent fixes to the system. And then platform engineering just shows them like, well, this is what we're going to call this new thing. That DevOps thing, that's still way off there in the future. They've got legs, but we don't. And we're just going to call the new model this. And
I think the Charity Majors article, I think she does a pretty good job, I think, of sort of like the why, like why is all this happening? And I think the thing that she hits on is, so, why does this need to exist is that, if you sort of implemented DevOps, and I think she kind of says it, in an article here pretty well, it says, the complaint is at some point you're sort of asking everybody to know everything about everything. It's like, hey, we're all a DevOps team. It's like, we're all on call. Like everyone has to be able to fix the platform, fix the features, fix the domain logic. And, I think that's really where I think, in her article here, she kind of points out, like, that seems to what people object to. It's like, you can't expect me to know everything about everything. It's very frustrating. I can't, do my job. And so the response, and as she kind of points out, is that platform engineering is sort of, the response is to say, okay, well, we need some division of responsibility, which is what I think people yearn for. Even if, it'd be great if everyone knew everything about the platform and the domain logic and the front end and the back end, but that's what's frustrating. So the platform engineering is really the attempt to kind of, provide that division of responsibility. And I think one of the things she says here is that, all engineers, quote, write code, and all engineers run the code they write, but we distribute the areas of responsibilities by layer of function, which I think is just what human beings like want. Like, I think if I hold you responsible for running your code or fix the things that you own, I think people are fine with that. I think people want that. I think it's when you go beyond that, when you're like, I'm editing the front end and I built the front end and now I have to somehow edit a YAML file to deploy a new server, where people sort of get frustrated. And I think that's what this is trying to do. So I don't know, Cote, what do you think? Is that like a reasonable reason for platform engineering to exist?
Yeah. And like, I think, there's two things there. And again, like, I need to like learn what all the people who talk about this say their deal is before I just make it up. But
that stopped us from before.
That said, I mean, in contrast, right? Like I feel like I and all of us have been around DevOps for the past 10 or so years, and so like we can say whatever we want because like we've stewed in it. Like when you're in the stew, you can comment on it, even if you're just like, a minor part of it or whatever. But like, so I still don't quite know what the self-identifying platform engineers like think about themselves as apart from like what already exists or we were aspiring to. But I think one thing that like, there's two things. One, like, yeah, as long as someone doesn't get pissed off about the term bimodal IT in this round of sorting this problem out, we probably will arrive at a very helpful thing, which is like, yeah, application developers don't want to do all that. And like, and nor should they really, right? And this is something that back in the past days, we were always trying to get across to people, and in the platform engineering world, you basically have this same thing of like, yeah, application developers shouldn't be doing any of this. That's a bad idea, right? And so it's almost like you essentially, it's a taboo thing in the DevOps world to like have this like pretty strong separation between the roles or whatever, right? And I don't know. That's a very unsophisticated way of putting it. And so I think it probably turns out that, yeah, your operations and infrastructure people are pretty separate from your developer people, right? And then structurally, and this is what people are always trying to solve. I mean, this causes a problem of the operations and infrastructure people can't keep up with what the developers want to do. And then in the other direction, the developers like keep fucking things up, right? Like they don't have enough knowledge about like,
if they would just stop writing code, we could
yeah.
stabilize it.
If they would just like we went over this stuff in the meeting and we have it documented and they have to do this, and they think they're all the arguments that like vendors can use against companies who think they're special, like I'm sure the operations people use against developers. They're just like, I don't know why they need this version of the database. This one is perfectly fine. They make all these claims that they're special, but really whatever. And so like you get in that classic thing of like the developers want to do something different and faster than the operations people can support. And next thing you know, you've got an ESB, right? Like and just like so
no, Cote, this is 2022, a service mesh.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. And so, I mean, that's the tension that you have. And I guess, like, and I know that this is another thing that, like, I'm sure someone with much more learnedness would point out why I'm wrong. But, like, I don't know if, like, organization structural fixes address just, like, technology problems very well. And, like, in this case, the technology problem is that, like, just the tools, I mean, giving developers the tools they want and getting it up and running, like, takes a long time for the organization to be comfortable with, right? Like, you don't run around like upgrading your stuff every month, right? Like, it's a long process. And this would be interesting to see as platform engineering evolves. Like, what's the role of just like, upgrading Kubernetes? like at some point, like your role as at some point, your role of platform engineer is just going to be like updating the platform, and that's going to be thrilling. And like,
well, you got to talk to each of the stakeholders. You got to, schedule that thing. It's like,
and I don't know. Maybe I'm arguing my way out of it. Maybe all of that stuff is cultural, structural, and the technology is totally fine. But my sense is that we probably need to spend a lot of time on the technology to make sure that it's not the one at fault, right? And at that point, but still, like okay, I'm babbling here, but I think we've got this idea in play again that like we're gonna have an operations group that's separate from the dev group, and then how are we gonna solve the rascally developer problem, right? Or solve the problem of like we need to update the platform fast enough so that we satisfy the needs of the developers, or we need to tell them to calm the fuck down and just use the stuff.
Or maybe the better way to say it, or you just, it's just kind of like that process repeats itself where it's like, okay, the developers have to like take more ownership of the new thing. And then that until it rolls into the platform, because there is always this fundamental tension. I think just what you said is perfect, right? It's like, hey, there's something new the developers want to do, but at the same time, the developers don't want to own it for the long term, right? And I think this is that tension that sits there. It's like, okay, well, if it's not supported right now, like, go ahead, get it working. You're going to have to own it for the moment, but like, let me give you a path that's relatively painful or painless or painful, depending, to get it then back supported. And I think, if there's something that platform engineering could do differently, and I think this is something else Charity Majors hits on, is like, hey, if you will, being more the interface to like lots of others, vendors, where it's like, hey, let's not try to build and upgrade this ourselves. Let's just know how to like work with AWS or go GCP and quickly, adopt the new thing that they're providing and make it part of our standardized way of doing it right away. Right. And so, I mean, I think there's just no way around it, because you just can't have, because I think even on the development side, it's like, you can't keep changing stuff all the time and not want to own it, and at the same time want total flexibility. So you kind of have to have some realistic expectations there as a group of application developers. Like, where am I willing to sit? And I think if we were to guess, it's like platforms have some type of lifetime. There's sort of like some period of 2 to 3 years where it's like, this is pretty solid. Like, we can probably stay with this and not add something new. But then there will be a time when we want to turn it over. And that is always as a difficult moment for every organization.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then so the second thing, which I think became a flaw in DevOps, is that, and I think maybe the platform engineering people do this, but again, I need to go do this, is like, I think it's really important for this kind of line of thinking to be very explicit about the technology that you should be using to achieve this stuff. And so let me give you an example, right? Like, is there platform engineering for mainframes and AS400s? Like, probably not, right? Like, if you're using that tool chain. Yeah, but
whoever's porting Kubernetes to that stuff is like, yeah, there is. And I've got your use case right here.
Right. But exactly, like you said it right there, is like, so probably what most of the people are talking about here is you're using Kubernetes, right? So there's that, right? Like, that's probably, I mean, and you don't have to be, but that's kind of probably like the focus that people have. And then you have the next level of stuff of like, all right, and that implies this kind of architecture for your application, so you're probably doing things this way, right? And like, it's almost like, like it's similar in the DevOps world, and this is still around, but like, there's this multi-year conversation of like GitOps going around, which it's right there in the name. It's like, here's this one technology that we're very prescriptive about you using in more or less this prescriptive way to achieve one of the DevOps things. But then it also kind of starts to break down, right? Like, it's almost like there probably should be a lot tighter discussion of like, use these technologies, and we as like the platform engineering world kind of like certify that they're cool, or that these are your best way of doing stuff, right? And as another extreme example, right? Like, a lot of this stuff, I think we were talking about this last week, is just like, I mean, eventually one day when everyone goes to using the public cloud, it'll probably solve a lot of these problems in the sense of,
for sure.
Yeah, in the sense, like, you'll just remove so much worrying about all the infrastructure management. And I mean, you know this better nowadays than most people, Matt Ray, but like, you also will remove a lot of like cost problems, because you won't have much of an option. Like there won't be this constant comparison between this and not cloud. Of course, there'll be like shutting things down and like, managing how you're doing stuff. But that all of that, like, under the application layer stuff, like, gets a little bit easier. And then also, I mean, there's more upgradability of the services that you use. And then also your developers have more choice of things that they can use. So that's another thing of just like, yeah, so in the ideal platform engineering world, like, would everyone be using public cloud? But my whole point being that I don't know the answers to all that stuff is like, that would be fantastic if we got back to just like, use this technology, like, do this thing and use it this way, right? Like, here's how you should package applications up so that they can be deployed, instead of it just sort of being a little like, not even color in the lines. It's like, here's a blank sheet of DevOps paper. You draw the lines and the colors.
And I think that's just where we are, just as an industry, right? It's sort of like, I think you're right. Platform engineering is more, it is sort of looking at the future applications, like the things that are even, I would even go beyond Kubernetes, just things that can be built, in the cloud, that are, very friendly workloads and development patterns that are, can take advantage of those services. So I think going forward, it probably does make sense to have this platform engineering. And then now where we are though is we're over this in the switchover of however much, 80, 90% of IT still on premise or something like that. And it's like, that's what makes this very hard. It's like, in the interim, there's still plenty of VMware. You already mentioned the mainframe, numerous, whatever, probably client server applications and things like that, that are probably more suited for, like, at least in the way Charity Majors defines it, like a DevOps kind of thing, right? There is still a lot of just like, get the infrastructure, manage the infrastructure, all the things you're talking about. They upgrade the VMware XYZ to the latest version, do all the patching, do all the security. And that, this will probably play out over a long period of time, right? And it will never officially go away, but maybe in the future, like, most things are just workloads that are fairly portable, built on platforms we know about, But in the interim, we still have a lot of legacy technology to manage.
Right. And none of this is like in a vendor FUD way to be like, oh, that's all adorable and cute. It's just like, I think by talking about technology more than DevOps does nowadays, it's easier to fit along with and solve those problems to get to the other half, the kind of newer development stuff, instead of kind of like ignoring it. And then to that end, and again, I have to finish my studies, as it were, to see what the community thinks of itself rather than what I'm projecting on it from, years of platformy stuff. But I think there is a bit more like practical practices or practical thinking in platform engineering in a different way than in DevOps, right? And so this comes up in two areas. And one of them is like, so, thanks to team topology and other stuff, I mean, we use this phrase in Pivotal Tanzu land, and, largely thanks to like Paula and other people like her, the idea of having a platform as a product. And that the thing that's kind of different there, hopefully in platform engineering, is the idea of like, if you treat your developers as customers, then you're going to need a product manager, and you're product managing what's in your platform, which, I mean, you could kind of like pull that out of DevOps, but I don't know if in the DevOps discussion they were like, you need a product manager, right? Again, being that explicit about, and then part two, here's what product management is, which I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm being arrogant about my operations friends, but I feel like that's not a thing that operations people think about necessarily, right? Like what product management is. And then the other thing, and there must be more of these, but the other practical thing that I've seen come up a few times is the whole like, all right, and this kind of gets contrary to my like, it's not all culture stuff. Like, as always, it's both things. But the other thing is like, well, now we need to get people to use our platform, which like, I've called this over the years like internal marketing, but I think advocacy is probably a good word. But it's just like, yeah, in your organization, you're going to have to go out to all these people and basically, as we vendors would do, market to them to get them to use the platform. And then the thing that you want to do that's nice and cuddly is you want to have it be a two-way street and once you have a product manager in place, this totally makes sense. Without a product manager, the following is a little hard to do. But if you're going out and talking to your customers, the developers, and of course your other stakeholders of security and compliance and blah, 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 though that thrilling pack of funsies there. But then when you're out there talking with those people, you can take stuff that they've said and bring it back to product management to kind of be an indication of how you can make the platform better. But so those two things come up more or less. Well, they come up in platform engineering more than ever they kind of have in DevOps, which I think is another interesting aspect of it being something new and evolved. Is it's focused on being very clear about we're supporting developers, and then two, how are we going to support them? What are the actual practices we're going to do beyond like the culture things? Because, if you were to say like, oh, okay, now you need to go get like, they must still do this. You would know, Brandon, like, we're going to go send you to the pragmatic product management course and you're going to learn how to product manage. Because like, it's going to be as specific as you need to prioritize 15 things and the 2 that we're going to do this week. Ta-da, product management, right? Like, there's all this other stuff around product management, but ultimately one of the most important things that'll come down to is just like, yeah, so what do we develop this week? and like,
but I do think, being more pragmatic about the whole thing is like, if I was someone just like, hey, take over, like you're the head of platform engineering for XYZ company, or you're putting it in, I think, I would start with like a pretty simple approach. Be like, okay, well, first let's assume that we can use the public cloud. There's no objections to that. And be like, okay, well, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get some general idea about what we're doing and say, okay, our platform's going to start with, I'd probably just pick one, AWS, for the sake of this example, and say, okay, we're going to build everything on AWS. I'd either hire an expert solution engineer for AWS, or like, I'd find that group internally and say, okay, the first thing we're going to do, all the developers, we're going to make all the AWS, console complicated, all the things that are complicated about that, and be like, okay, here's how you do it. Here's the templates you use. Here's your logins. Here's how you do it. Here's the pipeline. And we're going to start there. And we're just going to like, our product is AWS. And then we're going to look at it and be like, hey, can we just keep everybody using this? Does this do everything we can possibly want it to do? And
yeah,
then
I mean that's going to remove a whole bunch of constraints,
right? But then as soon as people start to say, okay, well, I got this, Brandon, and then that starts to build my backlog of requirements. Would be like, okay, well, I got this application or this new thing. Development's come and says like, I want to use this new service from this other place because it does something better. And you say, okay, how can I start to put that in there, right? And then especially if you have somebody that's been in ops for a while or been at that company for a while, like they could become the natural product manager of that group. It's like, okay, well, do you know how everything works in AWS for our company? Now people are starting to add this. Are you interested in doing that? You start to build that skill in-house rather than go out and just like, hire somebody from the outside, like an MBA, and be like, do classic product management. Just like you can probably find someone, right, that's sort of like already kind of doing part of that and just help them along the path. And then, over time, right, it's like you may end up with like a lot of best of breed services. Yeah, it turns out we need this other, tool. We like Snowflake, right? That's going to be our analytics answer because somebody came to us and that's what we want. And, and the list goes on and on. So probably a couple of years goes by and what you're managing there is probably 4 or 5 core public service providers, right? And you've got the expertise, but you're trying not to build a lot of stuff internally. Now, eventually someone maybe shows up and says, hey, I got to have stuff internally. It's got to work on premise. And so now maybe I call you Cote and your team. I'm like, okay, let's talk about Tanzu. Let's come over,
That's right.
And then, it starts to get fairly complicated at that point.
And we're like the new version of the Tanzu application platform just came out and it has air gap abilities in it now. So we can have an air gap conversation.
We need it.
Finally, I can run VMware on premises.
But the part I think, back to your marketing part, it's like, if you can start that way, if you're in a position to start that way, is hopefully some of the marketing of the internal, like people are, is a little, not as hard, right? Because hopefully people are excited about using, like, we're going to pick a leading technology provider. I think any of AWS, Azure, Google, like, I think you can find people like, hey, we're going to make sure that all these tools. This is the latest stuff. This is where all the greatest stuff is coming from. And then when Cloudflare introduces something great, like we don't say no, we say, okay, let's get on the phone with them and see if we can do it. But there we're not trying to build everything and upgrade everything, right? And that would be almost like, as the product manager kind of sell people, it's like, listen, I want to do whatever everybody wants us to do. I want you to have the access to it, but just know if I got to bring it on premise and I got to own it, it will start to go slower because I got to upgrade it. All the things you said, Cote, I got to upgrade it. I got to maintain it. If it's just signing up for Cloudflare and getting it in our AWS environment, that's going to be a lot simpler, right? That's going to be a lot less work for me. So that would be some of the trade-offs, I think, if you're in the meeting with the developers, like, I got to run everything on premise. Be like, okay, that's going to slow down. Maybe there's a way we can keep it off in the public cloud and let the hard work go to these other teams wherever possible.
Yeah, and your start with AWS thing like raises another thing that I think would be beneficial, and that is, I don't know if there's some platform engineering like think tank yet, but like they should come up with like a platform architecture. Like I know everyone's always afraid to like nail down a diagram, but it's just like, I mean, I'm a pretty firm believer in like everyone's always going to end up with the same boxes and arrows. They're just going to end up calling them different things.
They're going to get that burger with
the
platform
and not to be all 3-tier old person, but you're going to have your infrastructure, you're going to have some middleware, and then there's moving pixels on the screen, and it's just like. And add some detail to that. And then you have the stuff alongside of it. It's just like, to use the old phrases for it, what's your release and configuration management? Then you've got how you do, I mean, you could take the old ITIL book and rename stuff. They know all the categories. And then there's like how you deal with incidents. And part of that is like, you better instrument in your applications. And so it's just sort of like, we're all going to build the same platform. And you could take all the public cloud vendors and us and the rest of us vendors like the VMware Tanzu people, and you could pretty much like take that standard diagram, whatever it is, and then like show how each of those stacks implement it. And that would be incredibly helpful to the point of like what you're saying is, I think a lot of people over the decades, if not over the years, a lot of the waste in the system is dueling coming up with the diagram. Right, and like all the things that you need in the diagram. Whereas that's the one of the great things about like your approach, Brandon. When you start with like whether it's AWS, Google, or as people should really do when they start with VMware Tanzu, you don't have those dueling diagram meetings. You're just like, nope, this is the diagram.
Well,
we're done with that.
I was gonna say you can go even further, right? Because all of the vendors, I'll just say like, my day-to-day life, the five that I talk about the most are AWS, Azure, Google, Red Hat, OpenShift, and VMware Tanzu. So it's like, so what's nice is like all of those vendors I just mentioned, all five, right? They all have reference architectures for like almost everything. So you could just so if someone's saying like, okay, I'm in charge, I'm the product manager for the new platform engineering group, I literally would I would probably just either print them out or just put them all up, be like, okay, here are the five reference, based on what we're trying to build. You told me we're building like a web app, mobile thing, XYZ. Like I would literally just get all of them. And maybe we just go through and be like, okay, application development team, like which one of these, either does our application already kind of fit or do we want to use? And then, and everyone can kind of raise their hand. Like, I like Go. I'd be like, all right, let's talk to the GCP people. And then people are like, no, we got to have this other thing. I really like Lambda. I'd be like, all right, let's go. You literally could just kind of move around the room until you got some consensus, right? And you said, okay,
right. Well,
that's going to be the beginning of our platform there.
Yeah, I mean that's the phrase I was looking for, is the old reference architecture. Like that's we need one of those from the platform engineering cabal.
I mean,
they're all out there. There's plenty of that. That is the one thing I think the vendors have delivered in spades. Like you can get a platform engineering architecture from everybody. So like that is a good starting point. And then you can, to your point, maybe you just grab the red marker and people can start like crossing stuff out. Be like, I don't want this. I want this. And then I guess if it starts to have a bunch of things from different places, then that starts to be your platform. You're like, okay, I want this from Google. I want this from AWS. I want this from VMware. Okay, now we got to start figuring out how all that's going to work together.
I mean, this week we had, the GCP had their Cloud Next keynote and whatnot. And I feel like they're trying to pitch themselves as, hey, we're that platform. And all those things that you, the enterprise customer, have, we're filling in the red space. And, don't look at those other people. Yeah, we can't help but manage AWS a dozen times. But, you should come to our platform because we could be that reference architecture for you. And they're talking about mainframes. They're talking about, digital transformation, supply chain. They're trying to fill that other stuff in. And when you contrast that to like the other AWS and Azure, they've already kind of moved on from that. They're like, yeah, we got that part. And maybe this is a maturity or perceived maturity, but I don't know. That was kind of my takeaway. Is Google's still playing the please take us seriously card.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting watching, I guess, Ignite keynote was on Wednesday of this week, and then the GCP one was on the day before, the Tuesday. And so I agree. Like, I really did come across, like, the Google Cloud Next keynote by Thomas Kurian was like, it was fine. It was 1 hour, right? But it was a little bit, like, disjoint, right? It was kind of all over the place, right? And I think, to your point, like, Matt, it's sort of like, I think they kind of want, like, I think Google inherently wants to be a platform PaaS company. That's kind of what they really are when you look at like search and YouTube and even like their internal infrastructure that's so heralded, right? Like Borg and all that. And it's like they're always doing the other stuff because they feel like they have to, but they're kind of like not into it. And so like, I don't know, the keynote kind of like to me was like real disjoint. Whereas then watching the Microsoft one, I thought was excellent, right? I thought, Satya Nadella went through kind of like he kind of outlines, I think it was like 5 or 6 IT imperatives, but it was just easy to follow, right? It was basically just what you were saying at the beginning of this program, Kote. You said like, okay, first he's going to go over the infrastructure stuff. We're going to talk about compute and storage and networking. Then we're going to talk about the databases and the analytics. And then we're going to talk about some services on top of that, AI. And then we're going to talk about how we can help our end customers, our IT people with some things around teams. And it was just like it was like very consumable, information dense, well presented, right? And you're just like, I get it. Like if I'm at Microsoft, I know exactly what they do now, and I know exactly which sessions I'm going to go to based on my role. And so, it's interesting, kind of like as we kind of, as Google, I guess, sort of continues to try to find its way. I don't know. Like I kind of come back to like, are they playing? Like I don't know. Do they really want to play in this game of like, because AWS and Azure are just like, I mean, they're kind of just mirror images. Like it's so easy to see what's going on. And then you watch the Google one and you're just, it does make you feel like it's different. I guess I should leave it there and just say like, it looks different. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's different.
Well, I guess I like your framing here. The Google Cloud wants to be a developer platform. more so than just like everything in IT. And so like their workspace stuff or whatever they call it kind of like confuses us, which is probably just like an unfortunate like organization placement, right? Like
Right.
the infrastructure stuff and editing documents doesn't really belong in the same area, but that's a discussion for another time. But I guess like Google Cloud doesn't have like virtual desktops like Amazon has, and it doesn't have just like, I mean, I don't know the Venn diagram, but it'd be interesting to see the diagram of like what Google Cloud does versus AWS and Azure, right? And what the other thing around there is, because I would assume that definitely AWS just does everything, regardless of if you have developers using it or not. And then Azure, maybe by just the nature of it being Microsoft, does some of that stuff, just like identity management and things. But like, and then they probably also deliver like virtual. Yeah.
They've been working towards this platform model.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking with Azure is that exactly to your point is like they already had all of these things delivered over the internet or in the works, or it's a natural thing to happen to their products. And they could kind of just lump that into Azure, even though it doesn't really like, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that would make sense, right? Because I don't know how internal Google stuff works, but my understanding is like it's pretty much all a custom built stack of stuff that you use. And so that would be the culture and the mentality is like, you want an opinionated platform that has like the ways of doing things, and you want as close as that to possible. And I guess, their first foray was a pass.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know I have to wrap up here, but I think maybe we just leave it here, like because I think in some ways like the answer is like staring us in the face, or at least for me it's sort of like if you just like literally read the names of it, it sort of tells you that aspirations. There's Amazon Web Services, so services is the key there. Like consume a bunch of things, do what you need to make it work for your life, and then you have Google Cloud Platform. I mean, literally, platform is in the name, right? GCP, the P is platform, and it's like the aspiration is like no, like run it on our platform, kind of do it the way we want. And I think like to me that sort of like jumps out as to me, it's like that's the different aspirations. And so who knows what will happen going forward? Like maybe the search for the platform will continue on. I think that's where Google wants to go, but like no one's found it yet, right? Heroku, our dream of the successful Heroku continues on. So maybe they'll look for it, but they're definitely seeking that platform, I think, more than Azure and AWS.
Well, there's a lot to learn at conferences that are coming up. We've got a lot of them if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/381. Many conferences listed there. And Matt Ray is going to be at one tomorrow, if you can catch that. Oh, yeah, today.
Today for me, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And also
in the past after this.
Just to do a self-serving ad, we'll be talking about a lot of these things at Spring One Platform, which is December 6th and 8th in San Francisco. Developer stuff, operation stuff, platform engineering, as the kids are calling it. And you can get $200 off if you use the code COTE200, but you should definitely register for it. And with that, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend this episode?
My recommendation this week is a throwback. I've been watching Malcolm in the Middle with my kids.
Oh, boy.
And you might say like, what? Sitcom from the 2000s? We've been slowly like testing, the shows we used to watch on our kids, and some of them catch on. But Buffy the Vampire Slayer, kids are enjoying that. Malcolm in the Middle, they find hilarious. It's different though because they don't identify with the kids. Which they're like, those kids are bad. but so I as a parent, I recommend figure out some of the shows that you used to watch, and maybe some of them might be age appropriate to rewatch with your kids, because it's fun to do that.
Yeah, that would be enjoyable. How about yourself, Brandon? What do you have to recommend?
All right. Well, before I get to my recommendation, just want a few things on the listener feedback side of it. So I wanted to let everyone know that JD from the Software Defined Talk Slack, he recommended this interview with Pat Gellinger, your old CEO, right over there at VMware, but now he's of course the CEO of Intel, and it was really good. It was a really dense interview, but like I walked away thinking like, man, I know a lot more about Intel and just like all the crazy stuff that they're up to. So a couple things that jumped out at me is like I like Pat had this phrase. He's like, we're going to have the meeting in the meeting, which I liked. I don't know if you ever used that at VMware, but it was just like, oh no, like just the acknowledgement of like half the time the meeting doesn't take place in the meeting. So I thought that was really good. The fact that he was really big on OKRs. I guess, you reminded me, Cote, and I misspoke last week. I think I said Google invented OKRs, and he talked about that, how Intel invented OKRs, but then they stopped using them, which of course like was a whole nother podcast I want them to do. Is like, well, why did Intel stop? Because he's bringing them back. And so I'm like, but I bet you there were some smart people there before. So I really want to know that. Also, I thought it was really interesting. I've been like really thinking a lot about what I'm gonna call it, like person-centric management or ego-driven management. I know, like, we've talked about like sometimes it takes a big personality to like drive change. And like if you listen to Pat's, like just the way he talks a lot of like I and my, like, I'm doing this, my team's doing this, I'm going to, just sort of like you can tell he has a very strong opinion of himself. And maybe that's what Intel needs. So really interesting. And also like, one thing, like a lot of people say is like, detailed oriented and very data driven was another comment he made several times. So of course my analogous thought is always like, well, how many ideas does he never hear about? Because he said like, only bring me data, don't bring me ideas. Like, it's kind of interesting. So anyway, I thought it was really good. I feel prepared, if you will, to watch out to see what's going to happen with Intel, because I feel like at least I understand that the strategy's laid out. It's a very complicated one, but maybe it'll be successful. So over the next few years. So check that out. And thanks to JD for recommending that in the Slack. Also recommended from the Slack. So Cote, maybe some homework for you, maybe not. I watched Coin. It's the new movie that's about I guess the IPO of Coinbase, right? Yeah. And about that. So I watched it last night. Family was out of town. So maybe next week, if you watch it or Matt wants to watch it, we'll do a quick review of that movie. So I just wanted to, if anyone wants to see it, it's available on like pretty much everything. Apple.
How long is it?
It's I think 1 hour, 24 minutes. So
wow.
You have to buy it. You have to actually rent it. It's a real movie, right? So I have a lot of thoughts, and I've tried not to read anyone else's review. I was like, I wanted to go in with my own thing. So I don't know, Cote. So we'll see next week. Okay. If anyone wants to watch it, you get a whole week to watch it, and maybe we'll talk about it next week. If nothing else, I'll give you my quick review. So check that out if you're interested. And then finally, Cote, we have a huge migration project coming up here at Software Defined Talk. You didn't even know about it. Is that Heroku is going to deprecate the ability to run free services. So our Slack sign up is not going to work anymore. No SSH JJ. We've been working it out, trying to figure out where do we migrate it to? Do we have to switch platforms? How do we keep the Slack sign up? So most importantly, if you want, it's still working now. Of course it's working. We're going to solve it in the future. So if you want to sign up to the Slack and you want to use the current procedure, go to softwaredefinedtalk.com right now and sign up for the Slack. That way you won't be caught up in any migration issues one day when they happen.
I mean, don't we just like, I'm going to be the developer in reference to everything we're talking about. Like, shouldn't we just move to Discord? Isn't that what we should do? That's not a big deal,
we can
right?
move to Discord. Like, can we move everyone over to Discord? Or I'm thinking, so the options are, I think JJ can hook us up with moving it over to IBM's Code Engine. So just kind of do what we do today before. It looks like in Slack though, I could do like an email invite and basically just has a link. And that link is good for some period of time, like 90 days. So we could just use that link and then renew the link every 90 days. Will we as an IT group be able to actually remember to renew the link every 90 days?
This is all a perfect...
That's a questionable decision. I don't know if we could do it. I don't know if JJ, because he gets no money for this, I'm not sure he's willing to manage us in Code Engine. And then you said before, the mother of all migrations is like, okay, everybody that's in Slack, we're moving to Discord. I don't know. So those are our migration options.
It's like a microcosm of everything we ever talk about. Like we're introducing some tech debt. Is that every 90 days we have to make sure to renew this thing. It's like, making sure you do your DNS or whatever. I know that doesn't exactly match, but like we have this one manual thing that needs to happen, and we could predict with the utmost certainty where the failure will be.
Right.
and then of course, right, like, clearly to you want to start again, so you definitely need to move to Discord. That's what you need to do. And I feel like there must be, if not built into Discord, just some sort of thing like enter in your Slack admin credentials and we'll just move everything for you.
Yeah, just by magic sucker. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that would and the pricing, like I looked this up a while ago. The pricing is basically like, I'm very confused about the pricing of Discord. I think it's free except for not free for some stuff. Like it's almost like it was optional to pay for it, which doesn't make any sense. There must be some business model there. But their pricing page, it's not they don't sell by cores or seats, so I don't understand.
Yeah, it's something else. No, well, it is interesting. So we'll see what to do with that. But of course, what we really would want, this is just kind of back to like, the product managers of Slack is like, we really would just like, why not just give us a web link that just sort of like exists in perpetuity, that like, or sends us an email like every 90 days. Because I think there's another way to do it where like it'll up to a certain amount of invitations before it expires. And it's like, no, we just want a link that'll sit out there until such time that we either kill it off or they could tell us like, hey, we're seeing that this is being abused, like do something. So, but of course, like they don't care about us because we,
right.
And to be fair, we're never going to pay for this. So
I was going to say, and that is the most, what's the word? Representative or metaphoric of this conversation to all of our infrastructure talk is the one thing that is not on the table is actually paying for anything. that clearly that's not up on the big board of things to do.
It's true. I mean, it pretty much isn't, but like I would say if they offered some kind of licensing model that was even reasonable, we could at least consider it. But why would they, right? Like they don't.
Yeah. No, and
worth any time.
Their sales process would be terrible. They would be like, well, because they, of course, you do an ROI spreadsheet and be like, for the price that you're paying, you're going to get so much value out of it. And we would be like, no, we wouldn't. Like the price is going to far exceed the value that we get from it because it's
exactly
so expensive.
Right. So.
There's no.
All right. Well, this is a lot. So that's all the listener feedback stuff. Again, join us in the Slack. Go to softwaredefinedtalk.com. Slack's right there at the top. Join it. All right. Long work up to my recommendation. I'll just keep it real simple. I think probably everyone's heard of the show, House of Dragons. I was late. I didn't get started with it till recently. I was sort of like, I don't know. After Game of Thrones, I was like, do I want to watch another one of these? Well, yeah, I finally got going on it and I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. Like, so I think it's on 8 episodes. So it's pretty bingeable at this point. Like, I think it's just been solid. It's just nice. Also, too, like, I think it goes a little bit faster as far as timeline than Game of Thrones. So it's like, it's just one season, but like lots of years pass, lots of things happen. Whereas the times of Game of Thrones, like, entire season went by and they're still at the same castle. And you're like, man, we ever getting anything done? Whereas House of Dragons is like the pacing's a little bit faster. So you already know if you're the person who likes it. If you like Game of Thrones, especially the early part of Game of Thrones, you'll probably like House of Dragons. So check it out.
Yeah. I think it has a lot more usability features to it. Like you got a lot less things going on, a lot less people, just kind of like one plot going through there. And then, you actually, things actually happen. Which, well, they sort of happen. I don't know. Yeah, it's fun. I stayed up too late the other night watching that. Well, my recommendation is this little video I came across. What's this guy's name? He's the guy who puts on the Interesting Conference in the UK, which seems like it'd be fun to go to, but I can never come up with a business justification for it. Again, the idea of actually paying for it is not even on the table. But it's this guy, Russell Davies. And I was just checking in on his stuff. He's got a good blog, whatever. I won't get myself sidetracked. But he's got this good little video called Draw a Triangle. And, there's a great moment in the middle where he just is like, I don't know, I'm just making this up. But the technique, you can tell he's done consulting work before because that's what this for is. It's this technique he goes over. I mean, you should watch it, but I'll give a little preview of it. Where like if you're in the big meeting, you're trying to do some sort of strategic question, what you're going to do planning, and things have stalled out. He's like, here's what you do: draw a triangle, and then on the 3 sides of the triangle or the 3 points of the triangle, just come up with some way of like some of the characteristics of what you're thinking about. And I think the example he uses is like telco stuff. So it's like network. This is not exactly the example, but it's like network speed, pricing, phone availability. And he's like, and then just start there. Now you've sliced up the question into 3 things. And you can also play around with what you put in the middle. And like, so it's just an idea framing of how to do something. And the great part is he does this whole lead up. And in the middle, he's just like, or, you could put whatever. I'm just making this up, which is exactly the point of a tool like this is everyone's just making shit up basically. And so it's good to have a tool that kind of simplifies and formalizes it and documents they're making up. But I think it's a useful tool. And I think it's only it's less than 2 minutes to see how to use the triangle. It'll change your life. Now, the question you may be having, my test for any sort of white collar thought technology, if you were planning a wedding, would you use this? Probably not. I just like you couldn't actually use a Kanban board to plan out your wedding. I don't think you could use the triangle, to sort through things. That would be great if you could draw a triangle to do family stuff. I actually purchased this book hoping it was called something like, I don't know, it's one of these things like, how to run your not run your family, how to make family stuff better. And one of the suggestions they had, the author actually had met someone who was doing Scrum, and this author really liked the stand-up meeting, having people go over stuff. So he tried to incorporate that. And then the other suggestion was the one that I'm sure all of us tech people and white-collar people have dreamed of is, why don't we just have like a family meeting every Sunday to plan out the week ahead? And that's a whole chapter. And it's like, yeah, why don't we do that? Why that would be great. Why don't you tell me how I can get people to do that? But anyways, draw a triangle. You should check that out. Well, you've been listening to Software Defined Talk, where we like to draw triangles and plan out the next week, have a stand-up meeting, all those sorts of things. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, there's all sorts of things we didn't talk about that our community and us have been tracking throughout the week in our weird little infrastructure-y, developer-y world here. But you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/381 and go check that out. Also, you should subscribe to my newsletter. All sorts of fun stuff there, maybe too much stuff. But if you go to cote.io/newsletter, you can sign up for it. Really, all you have to do is sign up for it. You can immediately set something up to delete the email when it gets sent to you. This is the same policy for subscribing to the podcast. What's important is that you subscribe to it. Listening to it is just your extra bonus for the good work that you're doing. So with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye. Bye.
Right, you did the Matt Ray there. Good
job. That was the
Good
Matt Ray
job.
simulation.
Well, give us a preview, Cote. Will this week's newsletter include, I think you were in the Slack, will include some thoughts on platform engineering that seemed to be on your mind earlier in the
I
week?
think so.
Or is that,
I tried to make 3 little videos about platform engineering, and I think they're okay. I've only edited one of them, but they're not to my satisfaction. But I think I'll at least put the scripts that I had, the little scripts I have in there, and then maybe my little thread about like who are the marketing geniuses who came up with this one, and maybe I'll even put a link to the videos. I'll see. I don't know. I got to figure it out. As I kept saying, I don't have a good enough hold on what this community wants itself to be beyond like what all of us have been talking about for like the past 5 years. But there's clearly something there.
Will these videos be on TikTok? Will they be on Instagram? What are you doing now? I see you on the TikTok. I don't know. Are you still doing Instagram?
I don't know.
Well?
I should post them there. I don't know. I have no way of
should or
evaluating.
should not post them there?
I mean, I probably should, but I used to post stuff on TikTok, but I don't know if it does any good.
I feel like I got a TikTok from you today. Maybe that's just the
yeah. No, I posted one on there recently.
Okay.
It's just like not in my mind to do that very much. I posted those chip ones there. I don't really know why I'm posting on TikTok. That's the problem.
Build a community? No, that's not a good enough answer.
Yeah. I mean, what we've all learned over the years is like you got to stop building new communities and just keep building the one that you have, because otherwise, you got 200 views there, 600 views here, and then you never I don't know.
Then you got nothing for your OKR dashboard. You just got lots of low numbers that no one's happy about. So it's true.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
True.
Just focus on one place.
All right, let's see. Did we miss anything in the chat here, Cote? I don't have my glasses on. So
well, let's see. I mean, we had some good comments about how you're never going to get developers to do what you tell them.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that would be a fascinating.
Michael always in there with always pointing out. Yes,
I'll
developers
see.
will not listen. That's probably true.
I'll see if the platform engineering community has something to say about that. I mean, I feel like the last evolution in that thinking was from the SRE people, which was like, they can do whatever they want, and I'm not going to have fuck all to do with it. unless I've agreed to it. So it's now their deal.
But it is. I mean, maybe always at the end of that statement is just like, fine, you guys, you run it, right? And then the cycle starts over though. Like in the engineering team, it's like, fine, you guys just do whatever you want, you run it. Then they start to hire people that starts to build their own operation team. It's like a nesting dolls of application dev and engineering teams like rebuilding the same thing over and over. So
yeah, and another thing going forward that will be interesting is to see what happens in an organization when you have multiple platforms, and not only multiple platforms of different technology, but multiple platforms of the same thing. And then there is sort of like that is like, it's not one of those things where like one bad apple ruins the barrel. Is that how it goes? No, it's the turd in the punch bowl thing. Right? Like how one little thing ruins the whole premise. But like, there probably should be something in platform engineering about like, even if you're like a 500,000 person company, you should probably have at most 2 platforms. Or I don't know. That would be a good ruling from the platform engineering.
That's well, I think you're like the difference between services and platforms. And it's sort of like at AWS, right? It was like, hey, everybody just give me an API. All I care is an API. Then behind the scenes, do whatever you want. So there's that. And then I think you have the Google version of like what people seem to like about Google that leave Google is like, oh, like they've worked there. They're like, you're not going to believe it. We have this platform that would do anything. I gave it like 800 terabytes of X and it just worked. You know what I mean? So it's like I think those are the 2 dichotomies. It's like, people leave Google, they want that platform back, but it's gone. And then people at AWS are like, hey, we just do whatever we want. We're just one of the self-directed teams. So I don't know, like everyone else is probably like somewhere in the middle. Like no one other than Google probably has this world-class, perfect platform. But everyone kind of wants it. But at the same time, nobody else can kind of just do whatever they want as long as it's an API. That's probably only Amazon. All the rest of us are in the middle somewhere. I'm like,
I wonder if the trick is never mind the developers. Let's make it easier for the operations people to like build these platforms and kind of like be programmers of them. Like, maybe that's what you need is like we were talking about. The issue is just like the operations people can't keep up with what the developers need enough. And so the developers just like go off and do their own thing. And then you've got a vicious cycle of they're just like, operations people suck. And so I don't even want to deal with them. Whereas
but there's a version of this, like, winning cures all problems, like revenue solves all problems. Like maybe part of this is like, just be at a company that's incredibly profitable where they're just like, just like, it's like, like at your house, it's like, add on the extra generator, add on the secondary plumbing, add on, what I mean? Like you have so much money and time. It's like, might as well make everything bulletproof. And that's sort of like, when I think of Google, I always think of that as just like, they have big data problems and big compute problems. And they just have so much money to throw at it that they've come up with awesome solutions. And it's like, well, that works for them. There's pretty much only like 3 other companies that can do that. And like everyone else is like, pretty much got to like really worry about the P&L. So.
Yeah. And now they have to be 20% more efficient, which
even they have to be 20 more efficient. All right. Well, thanks for everyone, especially Brian and Michael. Appreciate always like seeing your comments, hanging out on the Twitch and watching the YouTube. So everyone, if you watch the Twitch, you should definitely go watch it again on YouTube, right, Cote? Subscribe to every possible channel.
That's right. Speaking of multi-platform practices, boy, we've got that.
We got the platform though. Restream does a pretty good job. Like we stream all over the place. I don't know if anyone, to your point, like we have a small amount of viewers in every platform.
Oh no, I'm into focus on like, whether it's YouTube versus Twitch versus all these things, but whatever. It's fine. This is this is like that federated web 2.0 dream, the open web. That's what we're going for here.
That's right. Podcasting and streaming. It's still part of the distributed web. It hasn't been all one platform yet.
We go to where the people are instead of forcing them to come to our portal.
All right. And with that note, we will tell the people that we'll probably be back next week around the same time, but that could also change. But don't worry. Just watch your Twitter and your Slacks and you'll get notified. So we'll talk to everyone next week.
Bye.